Good evening and welcome to the Norwood Board of Selectmen's meeting for the 18th of February, 2020. As always, let us begin tonight with a Pledge of Allegiance, followed by a silent moment of meditation and or prayer. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you all, and please be seated. This evening we have a 7 p.m. appointment. It's a show cause hearing that has been continued from March 20th, 2019. Show cause hearing YKLU Food Inc. doing business Olivio's Grill and Pizzeria. The reason, failing to provide the public with the services contemplated by the license, Olivio's Grill and Pizza was closed in January 2019 and continued until this evening. So that was 6 months ago. So, Council, would you like to introduce yourself for the audience, please?
Absolutely. Good evening.
Good evening.
Gentlemen, Mr. Chairman. My name is Jessica Drazzi, and I represent Olivio's.
Okay, and where do we stand right now? We had a 6-month continuance to give you an opportunity to try to line up a buyer.
We did. You did. Unfortunately, we have not entered into an agreement yet. We are still trying very, very hard to do that. As I'm sure you're aware, there's been a downtick in the industry, and we're making full efforts to try to find a buyer or even a transferee. So that I can say that with certainty, and the only thing I can do is ask the board for another continuance to try to find a buyer or a transferee.
Okay. And again, just for the edification of the people at home, it was closed on the 2019 rather than January. So this is actually roughly 13 months since it's closed its doors.
That's correct.
Any other comments from the board? What is that?
Is there a certain amount?
Are you looking for a specific amount of time, or
Well,
a week, a month, a year?
Mr. Selectman, I would suggest an additional 6 months, if that would be acceptable for the board.
Anything? Mr. Maloney?
Mr. Chairman, I appreciate that the license holder is in earnest and has been in earnest. In the past, I think we've been probably a little bit lenient on some of these things and granted extensions where there seemed to be a reasonable probability that a transfer or conveyance was going to take place. I appreciate your honesty. It appears like there isn't. I think we're probably, I'm just thinking out loud here, and I'll go along with my colleagues, but I'm really thinking, Councillor, we're at the end of the line here. 13 months in a robust economy, it just looks like something that's not going to happen. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, sir. And I agree with that concept because it would be 13 months from this point. Additionally, it'd bring it out to 19 months. That's a long time to go with a pocket license. And I think we'd be remiss if we didn't step up to the plate, no disrespect to you, Council,
I understand.
and do what we should be doing all along. Anything else on the board? Sir.
There have been no interest at all in the license or your operation, or?
Unfortunately, they've been trying very hard. It's just that, it's a tough industry, as I'm sure you're all aware. Opening a restaurant is very risky, so it's been difficult to find a party that is willing to do that. So unfortunately.
Sir.
Correct
Mr.
me if I'm
Plasko.
wrong. I'm assuming from what I think I know about the situation here, so correct me if I'm wrong. One of the reasons you might be having trouble selling it is because you're trying to sell it to go into a particular location,
No.
not just simply trying to sell the license.
Well, not necessarily. If there was a transferee that was suitable for the license, certainly we would transfer it to them. But we haven't had any, bites, if you will.
So you haven't turned anyone down?
We haven't turned anybody down.
Okay.
No,
Yeah.
absolutely not. I can say that with certainty.
Public comment? I'd like a motion to close the hearing.
I have a motion to close the hearing. Do I
I'll
have a
second that.
Second that. I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous. Anybody want to come forth with a motion?
I happen to agree with the comments my two colleagues have made that we've gone a year. We've actually unofficially given 6 months before we take the formal action that under previous court decisions and ABCC regulations, we really need to move this thing along in the right direction. So we are over a year at this time. I think that's been more than lenient and fair to the licensee. So I would make a motion under Chapter 138, Section 77, that we cancel and revoke the license.
If I may, I would ask, instead of a revocation, a time to, Olivio's also operates another location in Stoughton. So I would ask, at the very least, that they have the opportunity to voluntarily give the license back instead of having a revocation on their record.
And if we vote tonight, well, I don't have a second to begin with. Do you have a second on that?
Well, I'll second for discussion. Is that what you want?
Yeah, yes, I
David wants to
do.
say-
So if we, I think in the end, this is the route we're going to go, but if we follow what the attorney is suggesting, is the board open to allowing a 2-week for the voluntary surrender of the license? Or instead of the revocation in the wording, because that would affect her, their record as opposed to when they, especially if they do a voter
Mr. Plasko.
refinancing.
Again, for our information, I know we've closed the hearing, but you're probably a better source than having to stop and look up the law. What would be negative would be that location, if we revoke from that location.
Well, it would be the owners of Olivio's that actually, they have another location in Stoughton. So if,
I'm sorry, they have what?
They have another location in Stoughton. So
With a license?
I'm unsure about that, to be quite
Yeah.
honest with you. But if one were to apply, the ABCC would, when it got to that level, would be more critical of the application, and they, having a revocation on their record just doesn't look very good. So,
Mr. Chairman,
Sure.
if I may, if the seconder would go along and withdraw that motion and make a motion to continue for 1 week.
I will withdraw my second.
And I'll second that motion, the new motion.
Okay,
Is it considered continuance?
so the motion now is a
One further
continuance?
continuance for 1 week.
1-week continuance?
Well, actually, it's not a continuance of the hearing. We close the hearing, but delay action on this for 1 week. Table it for 1 week.
And so we have an understanding that something will happen, something will be forthcoming from the current license
If
holder.
it does, we can act accordingly. If it doesn't, we just take a vote. Like I say, we've closed the hearing.
We have a motion
So
to
just for the
postpone.
record, we're expecting a voluntary surrender license so that, don't force us to make a negative action that would affect you, because then that's on your own.
I understand.
So, okay. Just
So if I have
wanted
this
to-
correct?
So it's, I'm sorry to
Go ahead.
interrupt. So basically, this ends next week.
Yes.
Somehow it
Yes.
ends.
Yep.
Okay. Is that how you understand it, Councilman?
That's, I'm assuming, that's what the board,
So see if I understand it correctly. That'll give you 1 week to have them voluntarily surrender.
that's correct.
And if it's not done by this time next week, we will revocate it.
Correct.
I believe that was the motion. So all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous.
Thank you very
Counsel,
much.
thank you.
I
Thank you.
appreciate it. Thank you very much. Have a great evening.
We have our second hearing scheduled for 7:15. It's a public hearing. Ibrahim Alesu, Supreme Auto Plug at 145 Broadway, submitting a request for a Class 2 auto dealer's license. Alesu, Mr. Alesu, would you like to step up?
How you doing?
Very good, sir. How are you again?
Great, thank you.
Okay, just so everybody knows at home, and I'll go over this briefly, and you can fill in the blanks if I leave something out. You were already given a license, Class 2, for that location this past year.
Correct.
At the end of the year, you were renegotiating a lease with the property owner, and I believe the price of the monthly rent went up to a point where you didn't want to stay there.
Correct.
Since then, you had turned in the license and returned it to us, so you do not have a license for 2020. It expired December 31st of 2019. So now, since then, you've renegotiated with the property owner to a more moderate rent, if you will. And now you have to come back to get that license that you had that expired again.
Correct.
That sound like it in a nutshell?
Yes.
Everybody understand that?
Yep.
Any questions from the board?
Nope.
Comment?
Comments, sir?
Just the package seems to be in order. It seems to have everything we requested last time, including the floor plan.
Yep.
And as far as I can tell, it's complete.
I've looked it over also, and as far as I know, it is exactly what you had before. So this is just a matter of a vote tonight, in my belief, anyway. Any other comments? Motion?
Motion to approve?
Second.
I have a motion to approve your Class 2 license for 2020. And with that said, I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous. Relay, Sue, you're all set.
Thank you, appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Have a good night.
Mr. Farley, would you be ready? I know we're a little early here. We have a 7:30 appointment with Mr. Travis Farley, Recreation Department Superintendent. But given the fact that he's ready and we're ready, we'll hear his monthly report of activities from the Recreation Department. Good evening, sir.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to come in and talk to you about everything we have coming up in the rec world for the month of February and the last few weeks. So thank you again. I'll kind of kick off on the program side of things. On Friday, this past Friday, we held our annual Ties and Tiaras dance. We had about 175 couples, a little over 300 people there. Very well attended. It was a blast. The feedback was very positive. A big thank you to the police department for providing a detail on Hatton to make sure that people were be able to get to and from the dance safely. So a big thank you to Chief Brooks and the police department for helping us out in that regard. This week, February vacation week, we always say the Civic's always a crazy madhouse school vacation weeks because school's out, parents and kids are looking for things to do. So we had STEM classes, sports classes, we had knitting classes, we had art classes and baking classes at the Civic today. So it was a madhouse, but it was a lot of fun. We have about 70 participants in programs this week. We actually have a kids concert on Friday at the Civic Center at 10 a.m. This is a completely free event to the public for residents only. So if you're looking for something to do in the Civic, at the Civic on Friday, February 21st, it's completely free. It's an interactive band. It's a lot of fun, and it should be, like I said, a completely free event. Just a reminder to the public for our spring and summer programs. Registration for all of our play camp, junior play, all those fun and spring, summer programs actually starts tomorrow. At 8 a.m., February 19th. So if you're looking to register for anything this summer, I would encourage you to do it sooner rather than later because some of these programs do fill up. And then we have some upcoming events I want to remind the public of. On Saturday, March 7th, we have our Winter Carnival in partnership with the Junior Women's Club. A big thank you to Dedham Savings Bank for being our sponsor on that event. And then on Saturday, March 21st, we have a community dodgeball tournament with Impact Nord. Just two events we have coming up. Should be a lot of fun as well. On the facility and update side of things, pretty exciting. This Monday, President's Day, the Civics would close, but we were busy. We actually did a light weight room remodel and update. We put a new coat of paint on the walls, and we updated some of our equipment. We updated a cable cross, an incline bench, a decline bench, a squat rack. So if you haven't seen it and you're interested in any kind of memberships in the weight room, it's a 4,000 square foot weight room. It's a great asset for the community. If you're looking to learn more about it, I would encourage you to come to the Civic. It's pretty nice. We updated a lot of the equipment in there, so that was an exciting update for the Civic that we had on Monday. Some playground and field updates. The Bond Street Playground, I know this is a CPC project, but unfortunately has remained closed. And I know we updated the board in the fall. We did all the prep work for that. We are shooting for an end of March completion date, and that is weather dependent. Like I said, we would like to have some sort of ceremony to update the board when we have a grand reopening, and when we do so, I'll make sure the board is notified.
Thank you.
Lower Balch, we are working with Mark Ryan and the DPW department on the handicap ramp. That is kind of the first step of that project. It's the biggest step of the project. We are installing a handicap ramp from the upper area down to the lower. And so a big thank you to the DPW and Mark Ryan for providing us engineering for that project. It is going a long way to complete that project. And then we are actually installing ADA swings. We actually just purchased those. Mr. Mizuko and the planning board were actually able to secure 5 ADA swings for us from the Municipal Americans and Disability Act Improvement Grant. So we're going to be installing those at various locations throughout the at our 8 playgrounds in town as well. And then we are continuing this spring to work on installing bike racks around town as well. So a few field updates, and we did put through a few CPC projects for 2021. I know it says 2022 on the report, but I apologize for that. It's actually 2021. We are looking to resurface the basketball court at Murphy Field, add a few ADA handicap spots there as well, and then make some sort of handicap accessible path down to the basketball court and playground area because there isn't one currently.
Yeah, significant ramp.
No, it's not going to be a ramp. It's just going to be a path. So that we'll have 2 spots probably closest to the basketball court, and then there'll be some sort of stone dust or concrete path down to the basketball court. Again, we can work with the DPW, and Mr. Ryan is terrific on helping us out. I can't imagine. So we did put it in the CPC project as far as the budget goes. So we're looking to complete that project as well. And then last but not least, we did put in a pool feasibility study to look at all options again at Father Max and Haas, and that's something that I know Mr. Maloney's involved in, and Mr. Howard as well. So we are looking to look at exhaust all options for the pool and look at some hard numbers for Father Max and Haas as well. So that is our monthly update. I know it's a lot. So that kind of covers programs and then facilities and parks as well.
Before I turn it over to my colleagues, I just want to say thank you for making so much of these properties ADA compliant.
Oh, yes.
Something that, myself growing up near Father Max, nobody ever thought of anything like that. But a handicap swing would be terrific for people to be able to take part in the recreation. Not only that, but the ramps and everything else that are going in. So thank you for that. Comments from the board? Mr. Hajar.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Travis, excellent report. A lot
Thank
more
you.
detail on what's going on. I love it. On the exterior of the Civic Center,
Yes.
I know you talked about an architect design work for the exterior. Has there actually been like an engineering assessment of the outside facade of it, or is that what you're hiring the architect to do?
What we're having the architect do. So we had probably 8 or 9 different architect
Okay.
firms come in, and Mrs. Carney was there. So we had procurement involved. We're just waiting to get those results back from them to move forward with some sort of design proposal or architect proposal.
The second on the elevator. So what's the plan when the elevator is down?
We're going to shoot to do that during the summertime when we have a bulk of our programming is outdoors. So we see a little bit of a downtick at Civic Center use during the summer months. And we can, if there are any ADA issues, we can still use the ramp in the back of the Civic if need be. Unfortunately, the second floor of the Civic, we would kind of have to close off to programming to make sure that everything we're doing is ADA accessible. But we'll definitely make sure we do that project and complete it during the summer months.
Okay. And I know we talked about this, but for the Murphy Field, is the CPC going to receive an actual plan that shows where the?
Yeah, we had our first proposal meeting last week, so I'll definitely take your recommendation and we'll make some sort of plan or proposal so you can actually see a visual. I think maybe next month I'll have it ready to go so you can actually see it what I'm discussing for Murphy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, sir. Anything else from the board?
No, I think Mr. Hajar covered most. I did have one question about the pool feasibility study as to who is we, but you answered that when you mentioned Mr. Maloney and Mr. Howard, that it is that committee. I was wondering what happened to the committee. Okay. This is an offshoot of the committee's looking to do this.
Yeah, so this is submitted actually by the committee through me. We have a member of FinCom, Mr. Maloney is Capital Outlay, Mr. Howard's representing the board, Mr. Miller, Jerry Miller, yep. Catherine Lee, our aquatic director, Kathy Carney, who was not at the first meeting but is involved in procurement, will be there as well. So we try to get a lot of.
Bob Donnelly, right?
Yes, Bob Donnelly as well. So that's everybody off the top of my head. I hope I'm not forgetting anybody.
And kind of following up, which I think I kind of heard in Mr. Hajar's comments too, that on the things that might be going to CPC, if we can have some good information, because
Mhm.
once we can say we know enough about it that we're behind it,
Yep.
we can vote and pass that along.
Yeah,
Pass it along to our representative on the committee.
I can, if you'd like to see a copy of that, or I can before, you can vet it before it goes forward. I know, I can definitely make sure you get a copy of it, so that way you can vet it, and if you approve it, we can move forward with it. I know we can kind of change that process a little bit. That's not a problem at all.
I'm thinking it's support, and we can talk to our representative, make sure they know we support it.
Yeah, that's not a problem at all. I
Thank
think it's a
you.
good idea.
Quickly before I turn it over to Selectman Maloney, Father Max, I think, is somewhere around the late 50s it was established. And how about Hawes Pool?
I think it was a little before that. I don't know the, I don't
Long
know the
before
date.
that.
Yeah, it's older. I don't feel comfortable.
Yours is on that paperwork too, you know what, because the paperwork you gave out.
I know, I have it right in my paperwork, and I don't remember the date.
Construction date of 1949.
That's what I was gonna-
There was a
49.
pool there before that, so.
Yeah, I have all that information, and I should have bought it with me, and I apologize. I don't want to give you the wrong date either.
That's okay. But the point I'm getting at, they're very old.
Yes.
So there may have to be some very hard choices coming down the road.
Is that
Yes.
really old? I don't know.
And I think the feasibility study will be
Not
really,
till it's old.
yes. The feasibility study will be a great thing. The whatever architect firm we decide to go with is going to break it down. They're going to do a complete analysis of our current situation. They're going to do, if we're able to do it right away, they can take a look at what the summer is like as far as program and use goes. And then they can give us recommendations as far as, several different recommendations as far as if you decide to put a bathhouse in at Father Max, this is what it's going to cost, an estimate, and then they give you a schematic drawing for that recommendation. And then if you decide to close Father Max and put in a spray park, this is what it's going to cost, this is a schematic of the drawing. So they're going to give us several different recommendations with a price point for every recommendation along with a schematic. So it's a very in-depth
Very good, yes.
study, and then that'll help us when we're doing committee, help us with recommendations.
Thank you for that. Mr. Maloney?
Just
speaking
one
of
thing,
old,
yeah, I was in the Civic Center on Saturday, there was a birthday party in the Willett Room and in the gym. And so I walked around the whole perimeter of the gym, we got all new windows in there. Did we change the lighting?
Yes, about, I think it was 17, 18, we did a complete LED lighting
Okay.
transformer.
All right, because the floor is a lot lighter too,
Yes.
because it's been resurfaced. And it looks great in there,
Thank you.
with the windows, the fans, lighting, and the floor. And the bleachers are fewer seats than we used to have with the new system of bleachers, but we probably satisfactory, probably enough seats, you know.
I think we're going to be adding a few more banks. I didn't count on the number of seats we'll be losing for the stairway, the column up for the walkway, and then we lost more seats for the ADA slots in the bleachers. So we're probably going to be adding a few more banks to the team sitting side. So on the right when you walk in.
Anyway, but the place looked great.
Thank you very much.
All right.
thank you, Mr. Maloney. Anything else from the board? Seeing nothing, Travis, I think we're all set.
Thank you very much. Appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
Thank you. Okay, that completes our appointments for this evening, all three. If I can, I'd like to get into new business, and I'll start with number 1. Cigar Reese, Health Department Director, submitting request to hang a banner from April 27, 2020 to May 11, 2020, advertising Household Hazardous Waste Day and Letter Carriers Food Drive. And of course, that would be at the intersection of Day and Washington Streets. Recommendation from the board, motion?
Motion to approve.
Second.
I have a motion to approve and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, unanimous. Number 2, Thomas F. Branley, 40 Marlborough Street, submitting request to place a banner on the poles between Washington Street and Day Street, highlighting, quote, "In Distracted Driving," unquote, campaign, sometime during the end of March into April. Motion?
Motion to approve.
Well, just a question.
Sure.
Shouldn't we be specific on the time frame, because other people may, at the last minute, want to do it, and are we, I don't know if there's anything else booked in March, but he's asking for a few, so can we go 3 weeks from February 23rd?
Mrs. Mobile, how long do we usually let those go? A week?
It depends. Usually, for something like this, we let the light department decide, they know the schedule, and they'll put it up as close to the dates as they can.
It could
A
be
week or two.
We have one for the 27th of April, and this would go into April, so there's probably a couple of weeks in between there.
No, he's,
March, end of March into April. for the Brantley request. So there seems
Want to
to,
pick a date?
I don't exactly think they're backing up to each other, bumping into each other here. You want to call it April 1st or April 10th or something like that? Or? March 30th is a Monday.
So if we do the 30th of March through the 10th of April?
That's fine. Do you have a
Okay.
motion to that effect?
Well, Mr. Maloney will
Oh,
revise
I'm
his-
sorry.
If
I'll
he'll
amend my-
revise his motion, that.
Yes, I'll revise the motion that we approve the request for the following dates, March 30th through April 10th.
Right, I'll second that.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Everyone understands it. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, unanimous. If I may, I'm going to take 3 and 4 together. Kevin Smith, number 3, United Church of Norwood, 595 Washington Street, submitting application to use the town common and bandstand for an Easter sunrise service on Sunday, April 12th, 2020, 6:30 a.m. till 8 a.m. And Mary Ellen Horgan, Friends of Norwood Center, submitting application to use the town common to hold a farmer's market every Tuesday from 1 p.m. to 7 p.m. beginning on June 18 through October 6, 2020.
A motion to approve both requests? No? So moved.
I'll second it.
Okay, on the motion, I would like, if my colleagues would go along with me, where this is a Easter sunrise service and where there is a farmer's market, which is beneficial to the town, to waive fees on both.
Add that to the motion.
Well,
Sir?
I was going to say, unless we're requiring a custodian, I don't think we do have a fee schedule for the town common, and neither one of them are requesting a custodian, right? So,
Just electricity.
right, but we don't, I don't know where in our rules it says that we charge for electricity. I don't think we ever have. So I understand what you're saying, Mr. Chairman, but since there's no custodian request, unless we're going to demand that they have one, and that fee be waived, then you would be absolutely correct. If we, so,
So what you're saying is on number 3, for instance, if they require a speaker, for instance, not a speaker, but electronic microphone, you would want to charge them for that. And on the second one, if there's a cleanup, which I know they do themselves, and they have been doing for several years now, what would we charge them for on Friends of Norwood Center Farmers Market?
right, so right below where it asks the question, is a custodian required, they're saying no, and underneath that, it says if we require them to have it, we charge them $200. So unless we're gonna vote that they have one and then waive that fee, if we just approve the application as submitted, there is no fee.
Are you saying to charge them $200 every?
No.
No,
Zero.
I'm saying
Don't charge them anyhow.
there's no charge unless we're going to require them to have a custodian. But they're not requesting one, but unless we vote to actually have one, then there is no charge for the
Yes,
use
I've
of.
never had one in the past, and I
Right.
know, like I said, they clean up after themselves.
So as submitted, there is no scheduled fee to be charged.
So any,
Waived, we'll waive it.
would we waive the fee then for the speaker system if needed, or anything for that matter, on the Easter sunrise service? We have a motion to waive. Do I have a second anywhere?
I'll second it, but there's not, there is no fee for the use of
Electricity?
electricity.
Okay, then we have no reason not to waive the fees then, correct?
Right, right. So if we just approve them as submitted, we're good.
That's
Motion to
where,
approve as submitted.
that's where I was trying to get
There you
to.
go.
Okay, I have a motion and a second to approve. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, unanimous. That brings us to number 5. Christine Healy, Crafted Company, submitting application for one-day WMB license, wine malt beverage that is, on Saturday, March 28th, 2020, at the Norwood Space Center, Event Space Building Number 2, for a county beer festival from 1 p.m. till 9 p.m. Any thoughts on that one? I do. I'd be concerned if they're going to have it for 1 PM to 9 PM. I'm kind of leaning towards having a police detail.
Wasn't it, didn't the application say it was 2 different sets of times?
It's 1 to 4:30 and 5:30 to 9, 2
Oh.
different sessions. But we're being asked to approve 1 till 9, really, right? Yeah. Okay.
It'll cover the whole day. Hence the term, 1 day. Any comments?
That's a good point. So it's 2 different sessions under 1 license.
But it's a 1-day license, so.
I would agree with Mr. Chairman that if it's 1 license for an all day, even though they're breaking it up, I would recommend that there be a detail for those 8 hours.
So would that be my second?
That would be your second.
Comments?
What do you need?
I was just thinking my opinion. I mean, we're going to have people there for 8 hours consuming beer. I know there's a break in between, but I'm
One police officer?
I think it should be enough, yes. So I have a motion to add a police detail to that request, and I have a second on that. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous. Moving along to number 6, Michael P. Berquist, Massachusetts School Building Authority, submitting a feasibility study agreement for the Dr. Philip O. Coakley Middle School for perusal by the board. Excuse me.
Is that the same application we saw before?
There's a lot of data that ends up coming and the board is CC'd on as we go through the building process.
Information to file?
Second?
I have a motion to file for information. All in favor? In a second. All in favor, all opposed, unanimous. If I can keep my voice going. Number 7, car washes. Norwood High School boys JV soccer, Saturday, May 16. Philmont 2020 Troop 49, Saturday, May 30. And Norwood High School boys varsity soccer for car wash on August 22nd.
Motion to approve all 3?
Second.
I have a motion to approve all 3 in a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, unanimous. Number 8, cemetery deeds for review and signature of the board.
Motion to sign?
A motion to sign and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, unanimous. Number 9, Viola Babula, Verizon, submitting PEG access grant report for the 4th quarter of 2019.
Motion to file.
Have a motion to file. We have a second?
Second?
Have a motion and a second to file as information. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, unanimous. Number 10, Patrick Moore, Comcast of Massachusetts, submitting statement supporting latest quarterly franchise fee payment. Information?
So moved.
Second?
Have a motion for information to file. All in favor? In a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, unanimous. Number 11, Greg Franks, Senior Manager of Comcast, submitting Comcast's 2019 Form 500 Annual Complaint Filing.
Motion to file?
I have a motion to file as information. Do we have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, unanimous. Number 12, Superintendent James Collins, Norwood Light Department, submitting notice of 4th quarter franchise fee payment made directly to the Norwood Community Media. Information?
So moved?
Second.
We'll file that as, I have a motion and a second to file as information. All in favor? Opposed, unanimous. Number 13, Charlotte Kennelly, Library Director, submitting notice of open house for new residents of Norwood on Monday, April 13th, from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. on the 2nd floor of the library. All town departments and officials are welcome to attend. Comments or information?
Information to file?
Okay.
I have a motion and a second. I have to pull it out of them tonight. All in favor, all opposed? Unanimous. Number 14, can I just hold off on that for a minute and jump to unfinished business? Mahesh Pant, Himalayan Lions Club, New England, submitting application to use the Morse House every Saturday, beginning on March 7th, 2020, for the remainder of the year, calendar year, and provide Nepalese language practice for children. According to Mr. Pant, the schedule is not fully completed, but the expectation is they will be using it in most of, if not all of, the Saturdays between those dates, between March 7th and the close of the year. Comments from the board?
I'll move to approve, including the $10 per event fee.
Okay, do I have a second on that?
Second?
I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
All right.
All right?
Opposed? Unanimous. And I'm going to skip by that number 2 again, and I want to come back to that. Under memoranda, Selectmen's minutes for the approval of the board, minutes of the meeting December 3rd through the 10th. I'm sorry, 3rd and the 10th, 2019. Motion to,
Approval as submitted.
and do I have a second on that?
Second?
I have a motion to approve and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous. Let's go back to number 14, draft liquor regulations for discussion. Let me just open up if I could before you do, Mr. Hajira.
Sure,
This has been going on for how long now?
since August.
Since August. And I've got pretty much to the end of my rope on this. I'd really like to get something accomplished. And I'll turn it over to you, but I have some other things to say at the end. Mr. Hajar?
Okay. So the intent of submitting the draft for discussion is not to have a finalized draft approved. It is to get this in front of the license holders for a public hearing for March 11th at the Norwood High School, which I worked the schedule through Paul Riccardi. Get their feedback and gives us time before the end of March 31st exact, to then vote, after working through some more details, to vote on the final draft. So that's what you have. The pack in front of you, Mr. Maloney, I believe last meeting asked that I show highlights where we either adding or changing verbiage as part of our regulations, which I did. And there were 2 corrections that needed to be noted in it, and I apologize that I didn't get them before they went out, but it has to do with, let me hand out the, there you go, 1, 2. There you go.
What is this?
So this is 2 miscorrections that should have been included in the draft that you got. One had to do with, we all talked about the 4th violation, the suspension being changed. It should say 5 to 30 days, not 6 to 30 days. So you see the red where it's X'd out and the green where it's included. And then in section 3, the first sentence was expanded to include verbiage to cover number 4, and then we deleted section 4. So just so we're consistent with what we had talked about previously. But again, Bill and I actually working the issues. We met with David DeLuca about some of the language. He believes we're in good shape. Everything that we've talked about has been reviewed with the ABCC attorney. And I have I met with Tony early on, as well as Chief Brooks. And I know Mr. DeLuca will have someone present if we vote to have the hearing on the 11th, as well as Chief Brooks, to hear feedback from the license holders. And then we can, reconfigure and see if there's other wording we need to change. So basically submitting that as a motion to adopt the schedule and to forward a version to the license holders for the hearing at the Norwood High School on Wednesday, March 11th at 7 p.m.
Okay, we had not, one of the things I was thinking about is, last week I was obviously not on the ball because I was trying to get over a cold or whatever it was. I wasn't paying much attention, and we had correspondence going back and forth.
And your colleague had a medical emergency.
And my colleague had a medical emergency. My colleague to the right. So at no point in time did we actually take any, I know you're trying to do it tonight, but at no point in time have we actually sat down as a board and voted to have a hearing with the licensees on a particular date at a particular time, correct?
Correct.
So I am not in favor of that for that reason, because we didn't really, this is not a board effort. This seems to be a singular effort, and these plans were gone and made and everything else. And yes, I did agree to the time and everything else. But I think it was a job that we should have come to the board, voted on a particular date or a time, whatever, and then move forward with it. I think we put the cart before the horse. That's what I'm trying to say here tonight. And as far as, I appreciate your work, you've done great work and everything else, but it just seems like every other week I'm getting more and more paperwork on a draft. We don't seem to be going anywhere with this. And I know you're trying to get it done by March 31st. With that said, any other comments from the board?
Just a couple
Mr.
of-
Maloney.
First of all, I owe my colleague, Mr. Hajar, an apology. David, I know you texted me this morning, I'm sorry. You sent me a text about this, and I saw it, and I didn't respond. I didn't get back to it until I saw it about a half an hour ago, so I owed you an answer, and I didn't give it to you, and I apologize. I think the document has actually improved as we've gone through iterations of it. It does get better, and I think the language is tighter, and I do have objections to certain provisions in here, but I'll tell you what, why don't we do this? Because I think the time is going to come when we're going to, if either we all talk to Dave DeLuca or nobody does, either we all talk to the chief or nobody does. With apologies to my colleague, Mr. Plasko, nobody in the room knows more about Mass General Laws, Chapter 138 and 140 than Christina Mulvihill. So I'm wondering if it would make sense if we take, this is a good working draft at this point, I think. If it would make sense to send it over to the administrative staff for them to perhaps cross-check some of the references. For example, we put in yellow this week, which the yellow sections are where we have either added or made changes to state law. And I don't know if we should be making changes to state law.
Bill and I talked about this. That was the inappropriate phrase. We're not making changes to state law.
Okay.
We're using different language. As I said, everything that's been here has been reviewed by DeLuca and the ABCC attorney to make sure we're not doing something that we're not supposed to do. So-
Just a question, let's take an example for number 3. All managers of licensed applicants shall be required to submit a CORI certification. Doesn't the state do that check anyway?
The state?
Doesn't the ABCC do that? So if the state does it, I don't think I want that language in here. I mean, I'm pretty sure, I've talked to a couple of license holders, they said, well, you submit the application, the Board of Selectmen approves it, we send it to the ABCC, and they do the criminal check. We don't need to do it. Is that, I think that's the intent of the wording here, and I don't think it's necessary. That's the only reason I would, and that's just one case. So my point is not so much that specific, provision, but maybe we should have administrative staff take the working document now, cross-check it with what exists with with chapters 138 and 140 and any other appropriate or pertinent sections of the Mass General Laws, and then we can communicate them directly with things that perhaps we don't want or want taken out. I just think it's better if the clerical work hereafter is done here in this office by the people who, A, get paid to do it, and B, are more familiar with the laws than we are. Just an idea.
Well,
Go ahead.
if again, I don't oppose what you're saying, Tom, but there are some things that we may want in local regulations, even though they're in state law, that we want as an emphasis. If we were to copy the state law, we'd have a gazillion-page document. We're down to now 5 pages, and the intent was there are some things I think we want to, make sure there's an emphasis on. I mean, we ran into the same thing when we talked about some changes that we made to the Morse House, where we all know that you can't smoke in a public building, and yet we said no smoking. You know, you can't have lit candles inside of places like the Morse House, but we still did it as an emphasis. So in theory, I say yes, but I also want, there are certain things that I think we want to indicate in our proposed regulations as a point of emphasis to the license holders, not that it's going to be any different than what they would normally do through the ABCC.
We've done the research for you. Yeah, I get
Right.
it. Okay, all right.
So, you know, Cory checks being in it or not in it, it's just, if it's a point you want to make emphasis on, that they're going to be Cory'd. You know, by the ABCC is fine. We're not suggesting through our wording that somehow we're going to do a second type of Cory. We just want them to be aware that they're going to be Cory'd.
Yeah, I think the language
that-
here implies a second type of Cory, but
we
no,
can-
your point is
okay.
well made on it. I
Yep.
mean, where emphasis would be wise, I'm happy to go along with it. You know, redundancy is better than absence, you know, and stuff like this, so. But I think it probably makes sense at this point now, having, you know, with the document in pretty good shape, to send it over to the administrative staff, have them cross-check it as best they can with state law, and then we can communicate directly with them individually. And then when it comes time, if we want to maybe have Mr. DeLuca or the chief come in, if we think it's a good idea, we can do that and wrap the whole thing up. You know, and I agree, by the way, it's a good idea to send it out, well, to somehow get it in front of license holders. I don't know if the public hearing works, or perhaps, well, I don't know, mailing it would probably be a lot in postage, but,
Well, the point that it was actually Attorney DeLuca suggesting that we have a public hearing to avoid, if we have local regulations that might be in some cases a little different than state law or stricter with regards to, like, we talk about violations, the ABCC doesn't talk about first, second, third, fourth. These are the ones that you generated for the board last year. So we want to avoid them complaining to the ABCC that they never had an opportunity to participate in the actual feedback to us about local regulations. He says it's worth a night to do that. We can do any wording we want, but at least allow them the opportunity to say, hey, this doesn't work for us, and these are the reasons why. We can either say, okay, well, we heard you, but we still going to keep it, or okay, we'll change it.
Okay.
That was David's point.
so maybe I'm just thinking out loud again, it might be a bad idea, but maybe we, if we're gonna bring it over to this side of the room, you communicate with DeLuca and say, look, you know, we're thinking maybe a public hearing would be, what do you think? And send his response to all of us, and let us know. That way, if anybody comes to us, any license holder, will say, look, the attorney thinks it's a good idea, and so do we.
Mrs. Mullerhill, if I could interject one thing. Approximately how many liquor licenses do we have?
55, 56.
Close to, yeah, no, about 58, I think.
58? All right, we could send out first-class postage to those people also. Another thing that bothered me in some of these documents, we talked about disallowing any drinking on the job or drinking prior to going to work. I don't think that's our job to enforce those things. If we give somebody a liquor license, I am not going to micromanage that business and tell them what they can and cannot do. Did we have fingerprinting in here also?
We took it out because
We took it out,
most
okay.
of the board members.
Well, see, those are the things that really,
Well, can we talk about the aspect of drinking? It's really specifically related to drinking on the licensed premises before you go to work at those same premises. So again, it's.
but don't you feel that's a management responsibility?
No, actually, I don't, because we're basically telling the servers to be the watchdog over the rest of the sheep in that place to ensure that they don't get attacked. And yet, we're going to allow them to drink, and we don't know how much they're going to drink and whether they're intoxicated. This goes back to the issue we had with the Shamrock, is that the individual got intoxicated, and then he was responsible for the rest of the patrons in that place.
I agree with that.
So that's the concern. We took out another aspect of it about after hours, but if you're going to drink on premises before you work on those same premises, I personally have a problem with that, because your integrity of supervising the rest of the patrons has now been compromised. Now, we can say that's maybe getting into the daily operation. I just kind of wonder if we're not saying it's not a problem, then You're giving them an out, in my mind.
I'm not saying it's not a problem. I just don't feel that the Board of Selectmen should be micromanaging that establishment, any particular establishment, tell them how to run it. As long as they stay within the boundaries of the rules and regulations that we have, I'm not going to tell them what they can serve, what they can't serve, drink before work, after work. That's a position that the management should be taking. The licensee, the license holder. That's my personal opinion.
Well, that's why, Mr. Chairman, that's why I'm suggesting the route from here, which is to go through the administrative staff on this, because it can be, look, we have a working document. What do you, Mr. Hajar, think? What do you, Mr. Plasko, think? What do you, Mr. Bishop, think about it? Meanwhile, they'll be checking certain provisions within it to make sure we are, and I have no doubt they'll be fine on it, but you just double check can't hurt that we are within the bounds of the law and what's in this document, and then we communicate separately. And they put together sort of a document that says, here are certain questions that have to be discussed. Right now, we're sort of freelancing it a lot, and I think we better have an organized discussion if we go through the administrative staff.
I think the ABCC also has their own rules and regulations, as we saw last week at a hearing. They had a list of do's and don'ts.
Which I think is one of the topics we should discuss
Right.
at some time. Maybe not tonight.
Maybe not tonight. But with that said, I mean, I want to abide by the ABCC regulations and maybe add a little things here and there. But we've been at this since August, and I don't seem to be getting anywhere. I know we're getting close, but it just frustrates me that we just can't come to terms. So if the five of us can't come to terms, I think, again, I agree with you. We should send it off to the administrative people here in the office and let them try to come up with something. Then we can go from that point forward. Mr.
Yeah, I mean,
Plasko?
you've got an excellent working document. I mean, you got a great place to start. It's just a matter of giving it a form and going through the right protocols to get to a final version.
Mr. Plasko, do you have anything to add?
Thank you. Can I ask a question on your cover letter, Mr. Jar?
Sure.
Talk about the hearing.
Yes.
It doesn't say a time, and I heard something about 5 o'clock.
Well, that was, we had to work that time out with the chairman of what time he wanted. He did send me a response to email when I had asked Paul Riccardi if the high school auditorium was available on March 11th, could we have it that evening? He said, yes, you can have it from 5 to 9. And the chairman sent me an email saying, let's go with 7 o'clock. And that's
I
why.
think you sent me something
Right.
to the effect of 7 o'clock that I said, that's fine,
Right.
quote unquote.
This is how we go back and forth and all have different
Exactly.
opinions, and it makes it difficult. I would suggest that, I'm not sure we need a hearing. I think if we set a set of rules and regulations and we make sure that all the license holders have it, and we give it out every time someone applies for a license and every time license issued, and so on and so forth, we're probably well covered. I know council recommended it. I'm not necessarily sure I agree, but if we had to hold
Right.
a hearing, then I would recommend like a 10:30, 10 o'clock in the morning. Licensees, particularly those with restaurants and everything, 5 o'clock is just when they're getting ready to open their businesses, getting started. Very inconvenient time to expect them to come. And if it's not mandatory, you're not going to get them.
True.
So I think if you want it to actually be a productive meeting, you might want to consider an earlier daytime hour than an evening hour, just a suggestion.
It is a good suggestion.
But if you have it at 10:03 in the morning, you won't be having it at the high school unless it's a
No,
weekend.
Right.
no,
We'd
but
probably
high
have to have
school's
it
probably a
no more
pretty
to
big
haul.
place anyway.
Yes.
You know? The other thing is the whole general philosophy of this. Dave's been working on this a long time. We've been getting a lot of draft copies, like you've said. I sat down with him. I spent a couple hours on it myself. I sat down with him for at least an hour and a half at town council. I think that the current regulation is much better, in my personal opinion, than the first draft. That was longer and involved more.
I agree.
It comes down to, you know, I think any reason we would put out the regulations would be to increase, help increase compliance and to clearly state to the licensees what we, the licensing authority, expect for them to obey and to help to run their businesses. I did attend the workshop that was held on the same subject of local regulations at the MMA this past January. And really what they were outlining there, to me, was what I would call minimalist. That really what you have here as your sanctions that we already voted, and anything else local that we might want. For example, if we were going to require state, the ABCC does not require it, but many towns require that you must be tip certified. Some towns require that not only must you be tip certified, but you can't do the online course. You have to do a classroom course. If we thought those things were important and we wanted to make those a local requirement, those are part of our regulations. If we want to say you can't drink on the job, any licensee cannot have any employees drinking on the job, those things are not statewide, we put them. The rest of the things, for the most part, are in state law or state regulation. And I personally don't see the need to reemphasize them other than a general reference to them. As I think we agreed, and council suggested to us, one isn't necessarily right or wrong, it's a matter of style. My style is to be a little more minimalist, which doesn't mean any of that's wrong, it's just not my style. If we go not the minimalist way that I would proceed, but with a set of regulations similar to what Mr. Jazz produced so far, it's, in my opinion, a pretty good set, except for there's still about 3 or 4 matters that I personally would have objection to, but the rest of it is, a pretty decent document. But if you want to take a further look at it as suggested, then it's just a further delay, but because I think you're going to find most of it is pretty much mirroring general law, just that Mr. Hajar believes giving extra emphasis is important. That's why he's got it in there. So it's, I
have no problem with extra
I think it's a
emphasis.
philosophy of no problem with adding that emphasis and putting it here, or go the minimalist way. But I think once you make the decision, you're done. Other than I want to talk about a couple of points.
Right, no, and as we've talked, absolutely, because we need to hear from the rest of the colleagues about those particular points. So, I mean, we're really not that far apart. I think there were only 3 or 4 sections in which we want to talk about to see if we thought they should be included or not included. Other than that, Bill and I did basically agree on everything else that was pretty much in the document. So, in the 3 or 4 things that he asked questions on, it's not like it's this huge paragraph. There were sections of the paragraph in which
A line or two.
which he had a differing opinion on, which is fine. I mean, that's why we talk about things.
Okay.
So if you want, I'd be glad to submit a clean version to Christina, and she can review it. And if it's helpful, I can highlight the few issues that Bill had issues with certain parts of the wording, so that she knows where the back and forth may want to go.
Can I make a suggestion?
Sure.
Let Bill tell her that.
Yeah,
Well, I have it in his email. I can just
But
forward the email.
I mean,
It's
that's what I'm saying. Christina will put it together. Am I making sense here, Christina? Is that okay?
Yes.
Those things.
Bill, forward your email to Christina.
Those things that any one of us might have questions or concerns about, or just simply not like, we'll communicate over here. They'll collate those things. Perhaps there might be a question for Attorney DeLuca that no one's thought of yet. We'll say, hey, what about this in number 12? I like it, but it
Well, we
seems
didn't
a
vote on
little
it, so we didn't
strong.
vote on it, so we didn't.
So,
What I would like to see, and I think you're talking the same way here, is to take what we currently have, turn it over to the administrative side of this room,
yeah.
let them work it out, and bring it back to us. They have a clean perspective on it. They'll look at it the way they see it, put it together. They'll talk to Attorney DeLuca. They'll talk to the ABCC, Ralph Sacramone, whoever the people there might be, and kind of come to a consensus
We'll
of
probably
this is
come
what
to
it
the
should
same
be.
conclusion in the end anyway.
That's
But
fine. That's fine. Then bring it back, and we can hopefully move on before we run out of magic marker here, yellow highlighter. Did you want to make a motion to that effect?
Yeah, did I make it organized enough, or was I all over the place? I understood.
You're going to put me on
I
the
know what
spot.
you, I know what you want.
Motion to submit this working document presented to us by Mr. Hajar dated February 12th to our administrative staff for their review, and then follow up by individual selectmen with their questions, comments, concerns about said document. In the meantime, the administrative staff will cross-reference them with existing state law to find if there are any conflicts. And we'll come back with a revised document. We'll run it past DeLuca. We'll schedule a public hearing if we want.
You understand that? Close enough. I just want to make sure the press understands what we're
And I
just...
asked for a second.
I'll second it. I don't have a problem with it, just, it's not.
Okay, I think we're all heading in the same direction, and I don't want to disregard Mr. Hajar's work, because he has done excellent work. There's a few pointers that I don't agree with, but that's fine. So I have a motion and a second to, as stated, basically turn it over to the administrative staff for review and making the changes necessary, come back to this board with some type of a document. Is that correct? Without
Yes.
beating it to death?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
All right?
Opposed? Unanimous. Mr. Hajar, you have a second bite at the apple. Number 2, draft PBCC bylaw update.
Oh,
Sir,
okay.
you're on a roll.
So we deferred this conversation until today so that Bill could have an opportunity to do a couple things. One is he wanted to make sure I had captured his input in the latest draft, okay. But my main intent is to submit for approval to this board, to submit on the warrant for a special town meeting changes to the PBC bylaw.
Mr. Plasko, I know you had some questions last week. Anything?
Well, my position is the same as it was previously, and for us, say, once again, I think we've gone through a good process. This isn't as involved as the liquor licenses, but it was first draft, and then people giving input, and that input being heard and considered, and in some cases, or maybe even most cases, accepted and incorporated into the proposed bylaw. So I think in and of itself, the proposed bylaw is pretty good. Mine, again, becomes just a philosophical that I think it's premature. I think that the setting up of the facilities department's just getting started, that, as I understand it, you can certainly correct me if I'm wrong, that most of this bylaws was created around after discussion and a lot of input and agreements between the school committee, selectmen, administration, schools and general government, and members of the PBCC. And that it's pretty good in what it does, but there's nothing in here that would conflict and not be able to be incorporated by gentleman's agreement under the current bylaw, so that we could continue without bothering to make a change, go to town meeting, have to change the bylaw, which after a year or two of the facilities department operating and working with the permanent building committee and some capital type of projects, we might say this is fine, we should have adopted 2 years ago, or no, we want to amend it, or we want to do something entirely different. I just don't see that there's a need to rush and change the bylaw at this time, that what it would accomplish can be accomplished without a new bylaw. And other than that little philosophical thing, position, I have one item that I discussed with Mr. Hajar that I disagree with. It's in the current bylaw, and it has to do with the appointment of members. And I've always disliked it, and it seems if we're going to bother changing the bylaw, now's the time to bring it up, and if anyone in the world agreed with me, now's the time to change that. And that is the appointing authority. The appointing authority of the Permanent Building Construction Committee has always been the chairman of the selectmen, chairman of the school committee, and moderator. 2 of those positions typically will change every year, and most of the times they have to be told that if they haven't been members for several years, particularly if they're a relatively new member, they have to be told that that's part of their responsibilities. The moderator tends to last a little longer, but in theory is a one-year term. It could change every year also. So what it does is it gives you an appointing authority that's responsible for the permanent building committee that pays no attention to it.
Constantly.
And if there was any, and there's nothing wrong with what's happening. It's all a philosophy as to what's the better structure. And I think the better structure is to have the Board of Selectmen appoint, or the town moderator, an appointing authority that can be held accountable and responsible. Someone who watches what the permanent building committee is doing and knows whether those people are entitled to be reappointed or not. None of this is a reflection on anybody on the permanent building committee today. It's talking structure and appropriate, the best way of doing things. Any system of government, any committee works well or poorly based on the individuals. But that aside, you like a structure that's the strongest. And I think it's better to be focused where you have an appointing authority that can be held responsible. Another problem with having a dispersed, separate group that we have now making the appointments, again, I probably aren't using the proper words here, but there's nobody paying attention. So, for example, right now we have 3 vacancies. We don't have the chairman of the Board of Selectmen who's a member every week saying, hey, we have a vacancy, people apply. I don't hear the chairman of the school committee doing that. Last time I checked, there's nothing on our website. Because it's diverse, nobody's really aware. And if the permanent building committee members said, hey, guys, we need somebody appointed, maybe there'd be more attention to it. But on our own, there's nobody responsible for that, really responsible for that body. It's kind of out there alone. And I just think we should shore that up. There should be an appointing authority that can be held accountable. If Board of Selectmen, if people think that's some kind of power grab or something, that's not what I'm after, let it be the moderator. But somebody or some board, instead of this made-up group, that can be held accountable for their appointments. Again, sorry to belay your time, but it's just a philosophical thing that I had a point. Otherwise, it's a solid bylaw, proposed bylaw.
Thank you, sir. Any other comments? Mr. Maloney, sir?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Leaving aside the appointing authority matter, Mr. Plasko makes an interesting point on it. I'm not sure if I agree, but it's worth some thought. I think the bylaws is well done. Do we? I know we talked a little bit about requiring an architect, an engineer, and somebody primarily engaged in the construction industry. We're going to leave the language. I have the.
Well,
I might have an older.
if I can, Mr. Chairman, we changed the wording so it says the appointing authority shall make every effort to ensure that a
Okay,
minimum.
you know what, I do have that, that's right. This is an older one that I
Okay,
pulled out.
so-
I don't have the new one, I've seen it, okay. Frankly, I don't agree with Mr. Plasko that we have to wait on it. I think once the Facilities Committee is going to come together, it's going to work out fine. The likely, not certain, but the likely first director of the Facilities Department was a part of the crafting of this document, and I think you probably would avoid any potential conflict between the new department and the existing PBCC under the bylaw if you, oh, by the way, I know, Mr. Hajar, you took this to the PBCC too, about a year and a half ago, maybe?
Yeah, so the only one who ever responded when I did talk to them was Jerry Hobcroft. So he had input on this in the MOU that would follow, that would be more specific. He's not saying that he agrees with everything, but he did participate at least in trying to word it so that it would work for them and the Facilities Department.
Okay.
If I could just make one comment about the appointing authority, because philosophically, I agree with Bill that it's easier to deal with such matters when you have a single entity ensuring that things are being followed, that you have the right individuals in the right spots working on different committees and boards. We did talk about this at the Townwide Facilities Committee. We had multiple conversations about it, and the schools were pretty consistently strong to be a part of the appointing authority.
Ought to be.
So, I know by charter, we say that the Board of Selectmen are in charge of the facilities. The committee at that time decided to just let it be. It's worked. No one's really complained that there's a flaw in it. So the document that you see in front of you contains that, because that's what we voted. Not saying that everybody on the committee agreed with it, but that's how it came about, and that's why it's in there. So, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I kind of agree. I think there should be some representation from some of the major players, which would be the school department. They have a litany of buildings. We're in charge of all the municipal buildings and other buildings and so on and so on. So I understand your point, Mr. Plasko, but
Well, they are involved in this bylaw, and in practice, they are involved in the actual project that affects them.
so do I have a motion in any direction, up, down, sideways?
I'm going to move that we adopt the updated bylaw for submission to town meeting at the upcoming special town meeting.
I'll second that.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
On the motion,
On the motion, sir.
just the last thing on it regarding the appointing authority, if I was starting the world over, I might do something different, but I think the system we have now, this bylaw does not constitute starting the world over. I think the system we have now does work. Most of the time with the PBCC, they kind of come forward with people who are interested. I think you're right, Mr. Plasko, we probably have to be a little bit more proactive about recruiting people, but I think the current appointing authority is satisfactory. It just needs to be reinvigorated, and it will be.
Philosophically, that's part of my problem, that in the past, they have tended to pick their own members, and that doesn't seem like a very healthy thing. Philosophically, they pick good people, they've recommended some good people. Again, I'm not pointing fingers at individuals, I'm talking about structure and practice and system, of how the system should be set up.
I think you're. It's interesting. I think you're in the middle of a pretty big wave of turnover anyway.
Yeah.
We don't know how it'll play out there, but well, anyway, I'm in favor of keeping it the way it is, and I'll second Mr. Hajar's motion.
So I have a motion by Mr. Hajar and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So that would be unanimous.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and member of the board.
Gotta win once in a while.
So,
But thank you for that, sir.
Yep.
With that said, I think we've covered everything except the manager's update.
Just two quick items. The pajama drive is in full effect now through March 15th at any town building or any school building. You can drop off new unused pajamas for kids ages 0 all the way up to adult, and they will go to children in need, mainly through DCF programs. So we're looking to beat our amount we had 2,500 pairs last year. We're looking to beat that this year. We've already had several hundred pairs come in, so we're collecting them again, any school building, any town building, and we ask that people donate generously as they did last year. I know we've had the bin here at Town Hall fill up a couple of times. The last winter concert of the Winter Concert Series, we had probably over 100 pairs donated by folks attending the Winter Concert Series.
Question, Mr. Mizuko?
Yes.
Have we done a public service announcement on NCM, and has Mr. Bishop been involved in that?
He has been, he has been, it is available on the town website.
Moving on to other
NCM.
topics.
And I highly recommend you check it out. Perhaps next week we'll even have it for the television, so
that'd be
everyone watching
great.
this
A
meeting can be
commercial
able to
break.
watch it too. Other than that, I believe you'll go into more detail, Mr. Maloney, but February 23rd, which is Norwood's birthday, 2 p.m. at the Police Community Room, we'll be having a information session and idea gathering session on the 150th anniversary, which is coming up soon. And last but not least, a happy 92nd birthday to John Carroll. His birthday is today. And that is all, Mr. Chairman. I'd be happy to answer any questions the board has.
Any questions from the board? Seeing none. Mr. Maloney.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a couple of things. Yes, indeed, Mr. Mizuko, the collective, as we call ourselves, a few people who've been kind of talking about this 150th birthday for a year and a half or so, have met a couple of times recently, and with your help, we are going to be hosting a 148th birthday celebration for the town of Norwood on February 23rd, 2020. That's this coming Sunday. It'll be in the police fire community room at the police and fire station. Anybody is invited to attend. Mr. Mizuko assures us we will have a great big happy birthday cake with the town seal on it. And let's see, Ms. Paula Pelagi's agreed to bring paper plates and cups. We'll have some coffee too, perhaps. So cake and coffee, and we're going to discuss some of the things that have been bruited about by the group, and we're going to go big with the 150th birthday, and we're beginning it on Sunday, and you should be there. But if you can't make it, don't worry, because it's going to go on for a long time, and you can jump in at any point. This is just a kickoff, just the beginning. But try to be there if you can. The other thing, too, just wanted to point out, Mr. Mizuko, I went on a hike yesterday with Mr. Greeley and a few friends, the Rushes, the Austins, Roy Nopel, a couple of Jerry Miller, on the Saints lots, on that parcel that we're purchasing, and I hadn't realized how big it was, you know, and we could really do some nice stuff down there with a river walk and another path, and it goes right over to the Balch. I mean, we've all talked about it, we know it, but it's just to be in there, you can see, yeah, you can do a lot here. It's gonna be pretty cool. So we're hopeful. Do we have we closed on that, or are we gonna?
I believe the paperwork is transferring shortly.
I've heard that. Okay. All right. Okay. All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate your indulgence.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Plasko?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, once again, the rumors of my demise are greatly exaggerated. I apologize for a little disturbance in last week's meeting. I had a little problem with a medical device that acted up, but as you can see, I'm fine. I would like to thank the paramedics who came to check on me and make sure I was fine. They're very professional. They really know how to not only use their professional skills, their training, but they have the manner of how to make you relax and be comfortable and know that you're in good hands. And I know that from a couple of visits with them, not just last week. So I thank them and all the people who have inquired as to my well-being and shown concern. I appreciate it and thank you very much. Mr. Chairman, last October, we're headed to a special town meeting. We had some discussion of senior tax breaks and veterans tax breaks, and we actually voted to put articles on a warrant. And then last minute, there was some concerns whether we were ready, and they were withdrawn. I would like to add to our agenda discussion of tax break articles, because we are getting close to the town meeting season, and want to make sure that we start some discussion of this, and it doesn't pass us by once again. So I'd like to request that it be added to next week's agenda. I'll get out some information, and we can start some discussion of what we want to do with those issues this spring with the town meeting season. So I'd request that we add discussion of the senior tax breaks to our agenda next week.
Thank you for that. We will put that on for next week.
And thank you. And I just wanted to also, he's probably watching, believe it or not, but wish Mr. Carroll a happy birthday. I tried to call him, I think it was 4 times today, and that's how busy his phone was. We shared a few text messages, voice messages, back and forth, but didn't actually get to speak. He's a great guy, and he's still going strong. And in fact, he was one of the first people to call me in the hospital. He had already got word and wanted to make sure everything was fine. So happy birthday, John. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Mr. Shah.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a personal note that a lot of people know about my son Nicholas, who was in a tough snowmobile accident up north. And so I spent most of this past week up in Lebanon, New Hampshire, but he is home. I thank everybody for their well wishes, especially my colleagues, but there are a lot of family and friends that submitted notes of support and messages of support, and I appreciate very, very much. I know he does as well. He's, thank God, home, and bones can be healed. So there was no back, neck, head, or organ injuries, so he's a very, very lucky young man. But we thank God for that, and everything turned out okay, and he has a long recovery, but bones heal. So I also like to wish John happy 92. I didn't realize he was up there. He looks pretty good for 92. But man, thank you, John. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Shah. And if I may just take a little privilege here, I think one of the best things you can have as a homeowner is great neighbors. And I have great neighbors on either side of me. On one side, I have the Lake family, L-A-K-E, and they've been great neighbors since the day they moved in. They have 2 daughters. One's currently, I believe, 23 and working in Manhattan. And today is the other daughter's birthday, Rory Lake. She turns 21 today, the big day. She is a student at Emmanuel College, and I just want to say to her, happy birthday, and I wish you many years to come. Happy birthdays. Lastly, this is the Circle of Hope time again. We have an event coming up very shortly, in the next few weeks, a month or so, is the Dancing with the Stars. And right now, they're in their fundraising process. Mr. Jeff Mahoney, who is Dancing with the Stars for the Circle of Hope, is hosting a spaghetti dinner tomorrow night at the Mug and Muffin restaurant, starting at 5 p.m. I guess the point I'm getting at is Dave and Sheila Monaghan, my neighbors on the other side of my house, who are very good neighbors also, are the proprietors of the Mug and Muffin restaurant. And I want to thank them. They've been doing this for many years now, supplying spaghetti and meatballs, and they have a beer and wine license. They put on a pretty good dinner for the people here in Norwood, and all the money goes to the Circle of Hope. So I want to thank them for volunteering to help out the town. But again, that'll start tomorrow night at 5 o'clock at the Mug and Muffin restaurant, and it's usually a very good time. So with that said, I have nothing else unless I've forgotten something, and I see
to
that
adjourn.
nobody's paying attention. So
Second?
I have a motion to adjourn and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous. Thank you for watching. We'll see you next week.